I'm dying to see you. Got me waiting on my leave.
So I've just sanded all the plates that I made off with the little belt sander here, or I think some people call them a finger sander. Just going to sand out, sand right down into the bumper so these rivets aren't poking through. Just got to repair this bit still and the bit that I forgot. Righto, so that's all the matting and resin work done. You can see there, obviously, the goal is to replace the bit that's gone. And all this that's way too high because of the build-up of layers, I'll sand back until it's this level. So hopefully there won't be too much low spot there, but if there is, I'll just use like a fiberglass filler. If it was something really nice like my GDR, I would go to the extra mile and fiberglass it up until it's nice. But it's honestly pretty rare to drive the drift car without getting some form of damage, so I don't want to spend way too long on a bumper like this just to possibly break it the first time I drive it, so like stuff like that, you would, if it was a car that, wasn't going to get damaged or wasn't likely to get damaged, you'd go the extra mile and make sure this is all as good as it can be with the matting and everything. But for this case, I just laid the back up so it's nice and strong. It's not going to lose any strength, but I can sand all this down and just fill the low spots with fiber filler and not worry about it too much because it does have the thickness behind it. It's just the filler in the crack that might crack a little bit or something. But like I said, these cars get pretty beaten up. So this is what it looks like after I've ground all the excess off. There is still a little bit too much here sort of thing, but I still got to sand it after I fill this area, so I'll sand it all at once and make sure it's all level that way rather than sanding too much out of this and then having to add more, because at the end of the day, this is stronger than the filler I'm putting in. So this area is all pretty level, so I didn't have to grind too much into that. I'll do that with a whizzer and then fill the low spots. And it's important to grind down all the sharp edges and stuff, I guess, especially if there's like a height difference, because if you can imagine the filler going over a step and this end is higher than this end, once you sand that down, this area is really thin and it's pretty much just a shelf where it'll crack. So if you grind down a little bit into it, it just gives it that little bit of extra strength and blends it into each side. The other thing that can happen is, especially with fiberglass, like obviously there's lots of little broken bits. So if you don't grind it down, there might be like a layer sort of thing that's over there that you can't get underneath. And again, if you kind of do the filler work over all that and sand it all back, that's not attached, so that's another way to get a crack. So yeah, I just ground through all the cracks to make sure none of that is happening. Next step is to add that fiberglass filler. I've got to feather it out first with the sander, just so it's not going over glossy paint because it won't stick. And yeah, just trying to fill all the low spots there. Once that's done, you really don't want to go too far with that fiberglass filler because it's pretty hard to sand. So just do the bare minimum with that, kind of wipe it over and make sure there's no low spots without going too high. And then any extra after that, I'll just use normal body filler because it's way easier to sand. Right, so it's been ages since I've done any panel work, so I've lost all my tools and I can't remember where I put them, but I just made this thing up. So this is like a bog knife or filler applicator, depending on what you want to call it. But if you can see here, there's a big low spot where that joint is. It's probably because I didn't check it well enough. When I put the brace in, I actually made it on the back and then I put it on the front so I could glass the back, if that makes sense. And when I did that, I really should have drilled the holes a bit off center, you know what I mean? Just so to take up the difference. But long story short, this is too low. And with like a small applicator, you wipe in the bog on and it's very easy to follow the shape, you know what I mean? If you can angle it that way and then angle it that way, and it takes ages to fill that low spot because you have to pass it so many times, whereas with a long one you can see exactly how low that is. I'll just make sure I get a good shot of that because it's a bit hard to see. but you can see, you know, if I put that on the high spot and the high spot, you can see how low it is with a longer one, whereas if you get a thin one, it almost looks flush, you know. So obviously you can use the thin ones, but I find it a lot easier to use the biggest one possible, especially on such a big flat area. Can't really go wrong with the long one. So, and especially with this fiber filler stuff, if I fill that up, it'll be a little bit extra strength too if it's thick there. So I also can't find my mixing board. Don't know where I put that, but I'll just use this. You can use pretty much anything. So this is what I'm using. I don't think I've used this brand before, but I'm assuming it's all pretty similar. So it's a two-part thing. You mix it with the hardener and that activates it, and then you get, depending on how much you put in there, probably like, you know, a few minutes to get it in. So usually says on the can the mixing ratio, but if you want it perfect, we used to use like paint scales and weigh that and add the hardener till the ratio was perfect, but I don't have any of that, so I'm just going to do it by eye, which is what, you know, most of the trade does, to be honest. Alright, I'm just watching this back and I've realised how much I'm rambling, so I apologise for that. I just figured if someone's watching it and trying to learn how to do it, they're better off knowing as much as possible rather than me just glossing over something. So sorry, but that's just the nature of this video. I did find this stuff a little bit weird, to be honest. Usually you can kind of put it in there and wipe off anything that's too high, but because this stuff stuck to itself so much, it would pull it all out. So I actually had to kind of just smear it in almost like normal bog and leave it a little bit high. My plan was to kind of just, yeah, take the excess off, then rough it up and go with body filler over the top, but I ended up having to sand a fair bit of it. But yeah, that's just sort of fiberglass bog. It's very hard to get a good fiberglass bog, and even the good ones is still a little bit like that. So yeah, spent a little bit of time just to do this vent. A little bit of a tricky area, but just taking my time with it, making sure it's as good as possible. So this part I'm just cutting the excess off the back, and then I've got a 36 grit disc on the grinder just to take the bulk of the fiberglass off, just because I had to leave it that little bit higher. Probably wouldn't recommend using the grinder if you're not familiar with this sort of stuff, just because obviously it's rotating really fast and it's easy to dig the edge of it into something. And if you go too deep with the grinder, you pretty much have to restart the process. So if you're not comfortable with the grinder, there's plenty of other things you can use. It might take a little bit longer, but yeah, if you can do it first shot, it's going to be a lot quicker than digging the grinder in and having to redo it. I'm just pretty comfortable with the grinder because I've been doing it for a while, you know what I mean? So these internal corners here that I'm about to do, that's where it's really easy to dig the edge of the grinder in. I'm purposely cutting a line in there because it's that's the shape I'm trying to gain, but that's where you can make a mistake very easy with the grinder. So this little bit, the grinder obviously didn't fit, so I'm just using a smaller version, which is a pistol grip sander, or a roll lock some people call it. Yeah, belt sander for some areas. There's no real right or wrong way to do this. It's just whatever you're comfortable with and whatever you think is going to work the best. These are just the methods that I've kind of figured out so far. Belt sander is handy for in corners and stuff like that. You can get that nice round edge because the end of it is a wheel, you know what I mean? Whereas the flat areas, I'm just going over it and trying to keep it as straight as possible with the grinder. Again, you will get a lot better results by hand, but it's a lot quicker with a grinder and a 36 grit. It's just, I'm just doing this one as quick as possible sort of thing. So yeah, so this is a sander. So that one is a bit better just because of the dual action. It's an orbital sander. And it's more of an even sanding pattern rather than just a rotating sanding disc, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is a body filler stage. One thing I've learned over the years is always put more than you think with body filler, and always go like a bigger area than you think. I used to try and just fill the low spots, but the bog actually sinks back, and then the low spot's too low and the high spots around it are very noticeable. You really want to put way more than you think on, get the shape dialed in first, And once you've got the right shape, pretty much just keep sanding down until the high spot of what's underneath starts coming through. That's the best advice I can give anyone for bog work. It can be a hard thing to learn, especially if you're trying to do it the wrong way, sort of thing. So rather than trying to unlearn all those bad habits, it's easier to start from scratch with the right method and go from there. Right, I just finished sanding with 80 grit. I just do it with the orbital sander or Wizzy. Some people call it a DA. You'll get much better results doing it by hand, but again, I'm just doing this as quick and easy as possible. If you remember all that, that was, I think, 3 pieces. This is all broken through here. I think it was broken through here as well. Yeah. And then this was the bad side, which was broken all the way up through here. There was a chunk here missing. And there was like heaps of splits here. This was cracked all the way up through. You can just see there still. That's the old original crack. And then all the way up through here, and a big missing piece here. So I thought I'd just throw a few before clips in there just so you can see the progress sort of thing if you didn't watch the first video. This is obviously all in pieces and the cable ties are holding it together. It actually looks a lot better than it was. I cut the cable ties off and it literally just fell into like maybe 4 pieces this section. You can see there that it's missing a piece, it's missing a piece there. That's just another crack sort of thing. This piece is after I cut the cable ties, so you can see how kind of flimsy and broken it is in that section. This was the same, I just left the cable ties on that front corner section there just to hold it somewhat in place while I put the brackets on.